The accidental text. Some mistakes are small. You spill your coffee. You miss your bus. You forget someone's birthday. And then, there are the kind of mistakes that expose every secret feeling you were desperately trying to hide, in front of 200 people. Including the one person you were talking about. This is the story of Candace Adams, a woman whose terrible, horrible, no-good Tuesday became the greatest, most humiliating, most unexpectedly beautiful accident of her entire life. Stay with me, because I promise you, you will not see this ending coming. Stay until the end. Because the last scene will absolutely break your heart, and then put it back together. Character introduction. 30 seconds. Meet Candace Adams. 28 years old. Sharp mind. Warm heart. Absolutely terrible luck. She works in the accounting department of Remington Enterprises, a gleaming tower of glass and ambition in the heart of the city. She is good at her job. She is professional. She keeps her head down and does her work. She has one flaw. One single, catastrophic flaw. She cannot stand her boss. Harrison Remington. CEO. 34 years old. The kind of man who looks like he was sculpted by an artist who was given the brief. Makes something that makes ordinary people feel deeply inadequate. Tall. Jawline that could cut glass. Eyes the color of a winter storm. A voice that could silence a room at 20 paces. He is also, in Candace's expert, daily, professionally suffered opinion, the single most infuriating human being ever placed on this earth. He critiques her work with the cold precision of a surgeon. He walks past her desk every single day without looking at her. He exudes an aura of effortless, maddening perfection that makes her want to scream into a pillow. And he always, smells impossibly good. She hates that part most of all. The incident. The accidental text. On this particular Tuesday, a Tuesday that began with a broken heel, a spilled latte, and a 3-hour budget revision that Harrison rejected with a single, dismissive line, Candace reached her absolute limit. As he strode past her desk at precisely 3:17 p.m., radiating that infuriating cologne and leaving a trail of emotional devastation in his wake, she grabbed her phone and fired off a furious message to her best friend Sarah. She typed fast. She typed with feeling. She typed the truest, most honest, most dangerously unfiltered thing she had thought in months. He is so annoyingly hot, but at the same time so stupid and unbearable. I can't stand him. She hit send with the savage satisfaction of a woman who has finally said the thing she should never, ever say. 1 second passed. Then a collective gasp rolled through the open-plan office like a wave. Followed by a silence so total, so absolute, you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Candace looked at her phone. She had not sent the message to Sarah. She had sent it to General Announcements. The company-wide group chat. 200 employees. Every single one of them. Including, her eyes scrolled in slow, dawning horror, including Harrison Remington himself. She wanted to die. She genuinely, sincerely, with every cell in her body, wanted the floor to dissolve beneath her feet. And then, at the bottom of the chat, 3 devastating words appeared. Harrison Remington is typing. The entire office held its breath. Candace's heart stopped. But the message didn't appear in the group chat. A private notification slid onto her screen. Cold. Surgical. Inevitable. Miss Adams. My office. Now. The confrontation. The walk to his office on the top floor was the longest walk of Candace's life. Colleagues stared. Some with wide-eyed pity. Most with the barely suppressed delight of people witnessing a disaster that is, mercifully, not theirs. His office was a vast, minimalist space, floor-to-ceiling glass, panoramic city views, the kind of room that says power without a single unnecessary word. He was standing with his back to her, looking out at the city. He didn't turn around for a full, agonizing minute. When he finally did, his face was a mask of lethal, controlled calm. But his eyes were doing something she had never seen before. They were dancing. Lit with a dark, mocking, dangerously amused light. Hot, he said softly, his voice a low purr that sent a shiver straight down her spine. Stupid. And unbearable. He took one slow step toward her. Please. Elaborate. She apologized. She rambled. She offered her resignation on a silver platter. He stopped her with a single raised hand. And then he smiled. Slowly. Dangerously. Fire you, he murmured. Oh no. That would be far too merciful. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed, the picture of elegant, terrible calm. I prefer rehabilitation. He was not firing her. He was doing something infinitely worse. Starting tomorrow, Candace Adams, accountant, spreadsheet expert, catastrophic text sender, would be reassigned as Harrison Remington's personal executive assistant. Seated directly outside his office. At his constant disposal. Witnessing every stupid decision and unbearable moment of his day up close. This, he said, with the satisfaction of a man who has just checkmated his opponent in 3 moves, is your punishment, Miss Adams. You are going to get to know your boss. Intimately. She stared at him. Speechless. Horrified. You can't be serious, she whispered. He leaned in until his face was just inches from hers. His aftershave, that infuriating, dizzying aftershave, was overwhelming at this distance. Try me, he whispered back. Then he straightened, and added, almost as an afterthought, by the way, your first task tonight is to cancel your dinner plans. Your hot, stupid, and unbearable boss needs you to work late. And so it began. Recap. She sent the most humiliating text of her life to 200 people. Her boss read every word. And instead of firing her, he made her his personal assistant. If you thought that was the most dangerous thing that could happen to Candace Adams, you were very, very wrong. The psychological warfare. Candace's first day as Harrison's executive assistant was a masterclass in creative, precisely targeted cruelty. He had her reorganize his fountain pen collection, first by nib size, then by ink color, then alphabetically by manufacturer. It took 2 hours. He never looked up from his computer. He sent her on a mission across the entire city to find one specific brand of imported sparkling water. The one with the blue label. Not the green one. And the bubbles must be small and aggressive. His face was perfectly straight when he said it. Finally, the crown jewel of his punishment, he dropped a 200-page market analysis report on her desk with a heavy, deliberate thud. I've decided I don't like the font, he said, without a flicker of apology. Reformat it. I want options. Any other assistant would have quit. Or cried. Possibly both, in that order. But Candace Adams was not any other assistant. She was running on pure, righteous, magnificent fury, and she had decided, somewhere between the pen reorganization and the bubble audit, that if Harrison Remington wanted to play a game, she was going to play it better than he ever had. The counterattack. She didn't just reformat the report. She created 3 complete versions, each with a different elegant font, and attached a professionally written 2-page comparative readability study, complete with fabricated charts and citations, concluding with a formal recommendation. She found the water. All 3 hours of searching. She placed it on his desk with a small handwritten note, I trust the bubble aggression meets your standards. And the pens? She organized them exactly as instructed, and then arranged them on his desk in a perfect, vibrant, undeniable rainbow. That evening, he called her into his darkened office. The pens, the water, the report, all arranged on his desk like evidence in a trial. You think this is funny, Miss Adams? I thought the objective was thoroughness and efficiency, she replied, her voice a melody of perfect, crystalline innocence. Was my work not satisfactory? A long silence. She held his gaze without flinching, her heart hammering, her expression serene. Something shifted in his face. She saw a war happening behind his eyes, between fury at her defiance and something else. Something unexpected. A reluctant, genuine flicker of admiration. He had set a trap. She had walked into it, dismantled it, and mailed it back to him gift-wrapped. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh, more to himself than to her, and turned to the window. Pack your bags, he said. Business trip to Chicago. 2 days. You're handling the itinerary. She almost smiled. Almost. Chicago. The hotel. Candice booked 2 separate suites. Adjacent. Professional. Appropriate. What happened at check-in was not professional. It was not appropriate. It was the universe's idea of a very cruel joke. The hotel system had experienced an error. They were overbooked. Only 1 room remained available. The presidential suite. 1 king-sized bed. Harrison turned to look at her, a slow, malicious smile spreading across his perfectly constructed face. "Well, Miss Adams," he murmured, "it seems your luck has just run out." The night that changes everything. The suite was palatial. The bed was enormous. The atmosphere was electric with the specific, excruciating tension of 2 people who are very deliberately not thinking about each other. After a business dinner that left them both exhausted, Harrison disappeared into the bathroom. When he emerged, Candice was pretending to read a report. She was not reading a report. He was wearing grey sweatpants and nothing else. A towel slung around his neck. His shoulders and chest were carved from the kind of disciplined dedication that ordinary people only read about. The word hot in her original text message had been, she was forced to admit internally, a catastrophic understatement. Her eyes flickered up, came back down. Her cheeks turned the color of a fire alarm. He saw it. Of course he saw it. He stopped, a knowing, triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "Don't worry, Candice," he said softly. "Your hot, stupid, and unbearable boss is just going to find a shirt." She wanted to dissolve into the floor. Later, in the dark, sleep refused to come. She lay on her side of the massive bed, rigid, hyper-aware of every sound, every shift of the mattress, every slow, even breath from the other side. And then she heard it. A low, broken sound. A murmur from somewhere deep in sleep. She turned. In the dim light, she could see him, Harrison Remington, the untouchable CEO, caught in the grip of a nightmare. His face twisted. His head turning against the pillow. And then, in a voice she had never heard before, choked, small, terrifyingly young. "Dad, please don't." The words hit her like cold water. In his sleep, he was not Harrison Remington. He was just a boy. Frightened. Alone. Braced for something she couldn't see. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his shoulder. "Harrison. Wake up. You're dreaming." He jolted awake, disoriented, chest heaving. And then he saw her, her hand still on his shoulder, her face close, her expression full of a concern she hadn't planned to feel. The panic in his eyes faded slowly, replaced by something raw and unguarded that she had never seen there before. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand came up and covered hers. His grip was tight. Not like a CEO. Like a man terrified of the dark. "Stay," he whispered. "Just for a minute." The confession. Before dawn. She stayed. And in the fragile, blue hours before sunrise, the last walls between them crumbled. He told her about his father. About a childhood measured not in affection but in expectations. About a man who saw his son not as a child to be loved, but as an heir to be perfected. About the relentless, crushing weight of being required, always, in every moment, to be infallible. Any failure was unacceptable, he said, his voice low and rough, his gaze on the city lights outside. Any weakness was a problem to be corrected, not a feeling to be acknowledged. As he spoke, Candice felt something she hadn't expected. The stupid and unbearable CEO she had railed against in that catastrophic text was dissolving before her eyes. In his place stood someone she recognized, someone lonely, someone pressure-forged into a shape that had nothing to do with who he actually was. She told him about her own hidden life. About her love of art history, a passion she had packed away like a summer dress in winter because it wasn't practical, wasn't sensible, didn't pay the bills. About her dream of working in a museum, surrounded by beauty and centuries and meaning, instead of spreadsheets and quarterly projections. They talked until the sky began to change. By the time the first pale light of dawn filtered through the curtains, they were sitting shoulder to shoulder against the headboard. Two people who had spent weeks building walls against each other, now quietly sharing what was behind them. He turned to look at her. His face was soft in a way she had never seen, open, undefended, almost shy. He reached out, slowly, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I shouldn't have done this to you," he whispered. "The punishment. The games. All of it. And I shouldn't have called you stupid," she whispered back. The moment balanced on the edge of itself. And then he leaned in. And she met him halfway. The kiss was slow, tender, hesitant and honest and completely overwhelming. It was a question and a confession and an acknowledgement of something that had been building since the first moment he walked past her desk and left the scent of his aftershave and the wreckage of her composure in his wake. It was the first truly real moment between them. And then Harrison's phone alarm went off. 7 a.m. board meeting in 2 hours. Reality arrived like a bucket of ice water. The flight home was silence. He put on his headphones and buried himself in a financial report. Cool. Professional. Impenetrable. As if the dark and the dawn and the kiss had never happened at all. He left her standing alone at the gate with nothing but the ghost of his lips on hers and a hollow, aching space where something beautiful had briefly, brilliantly, been. But here is what Candace didn't know yet. Harrison Remington was not cold. He was terrified. And terrified men make terrible decisions. Recap. They kissed before sunrise in a hotel suite in Chicago. He held her hand in the dark and whispered stay. And then, when the lights came back on and the real world returned, he pretended it never happened. Some people are brave in the dark. The question is whether they have the courage to be the same person in the light. The cold shoulder and Mark. Back in the office, Harrison was Harrison again. CEO. Untouchable. Professionally distant to the point of brutality. He spoke to Candace with an exaggerated formality that was, somehow, more painful than his original hostility had ever been. She had let him in. He had let her in. And now he was acting as though the door had never existed. Determined not to become his secret, pining assistant, Candace made a decision. She would not wait. She would not pine. She would live. Mark, a warm and charming lawyer from the legal department, had been quietly, genuinely interested in her for weeks. He was everything Harrison pretended not to be. Approachable, openly admiring, uncomplicated. When he invited her to lunch, she said yes. And she smiled doing it, making sure, just a little, that Harrison had a perfect view from his glass-walled office. He did. From behind his desk, Harrison watched them leave together, and felt something irrational and hot and completely inconvenient ignite in his chest. He told himself it was because his assistant was neglecting her work. He proceeded to call her desk phone every 30 minutes for the rest of the afternoon. The escalation. Harrison's war against Candace's happiness became almost comically transparent. Every time Mark approached her desk, to ask about lunch, a movie, a drink, Harrison materialized from his office like a man summoned by an invisible alarm, armed with an urgent, entirely fabricated task. But Mark, it turned out, was not the simple, easygoing lawyer he appeared to be. He had a history with Harrison. A history that gave him the calm, unmovable confidence to look the CEO directly in the eye and say, "I'm sorry, Harrison. But Candace is having lunch with me today. I'm sure your urgent catering crisis can wait until 2. The office held its breath. Harrison, jaw tight, eyes dangerous, back down. Candace stared. Who was this man? And more importantly, what did he know about Harrison that she didn't? The breaking point. On Monday evening, the office was empty. Candace walked into Harrison's office and did something she had never done before. She stopped in front of his desk, crossed her arms, and waited. When he finally looked up from his papers and saw her expression, he went still. "I'm not doing it," she said. Her voice was calm. Absolutely, devastatingly calm. "I'm not playing this game anymore." "What game?" "The one where you're too afraid to admit you feel something," she said, "but too possessive to let me move on. You don't want me, not really, not publicly, not in a way that costs you anything. But you don't want anyone else to have me either. And I am tired of being a pawn on your chessboard, Harrison. I deserve more than that." The room was very quiet. He stared at her for a long moment. And then, for the first time in weeks, the mask slipped. She saw defeat in his eyes. Genuine, exhausted defeat. "You're right," he said softly. "I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that watching you with him makes me feel something I can't turn off." He stood and walked toward her slowly. "Teach me how to stop," he whispered. "Or give me a reason not to." He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Because I can't fight this anymore." And he kissed her. Not with heat or hunger, but with complete, total surrender. Every wall down. Every pretense gone. Just the truth of a man who had been fighting his own heart for months and had finally, irrevocably, lost. The retreat that broke her. But love is not a single moment. It is a choice, made repeatedly, in conditions that are not always comfortable or convenient. Their romance was beautiful and real and entirely, agonizingly secret. The nights belonged to them, discreet restaurants, late movies at his penthouse, quiet conversations that went until dawn. In private, he was tender, present, completely himself. In the office, he was Harrison Remington. And Candice was Miss Adams, his assistant. The corporate retreat was the knife. In front of the entire executive team, Harrison casually announced that he would be attending the weekend event accompanied by Victoria Lancaster, a well-connected socialite. Family friend. The perfect appropriate companion for a man of his position. He didn't glance at Candice when he said it. That weekend, she organized his schedule and took notes during his speeches while Harrison laughed with Victoria and played the part of the elegant, powerful eligible bachelor for the benefit of his father, the board chairman, and anyone else whose opinion he feared more than his own heart. Mark found her by a lake at the edge of the property. She was crying quietly, the kind of crying that is made small and controlled because you know you are not allowed to fall apart. "He doesn't deserve you," Mark said gently. "I know he cares," she whispered. "But he's so afraid. Of his father. Of what people will think." Mark looked at her for a long moment. And then he said the thing that cut through every excuse she had been making. "Words are easy. Anyone can say they care. But his actions are telling you a different story. They're telling you that his image, his convenience, matters more than your heart. Why are you waiting for a man who will only love you in the dark, when you deserve someone who would be proud to love you in the light?" The truth about Mark. That evening, Harrison found her alone on the terrace. The party noise drifted out from behind them. Victoria was inside somewhere. The city lights reflected on the water below. "Candy," he said. Just that. Just her name. And in the way he said it, private, aching, terrified, she heard everything he couldn't say in the meeting room. "I saw you talking to Mark," he said quietly. "I know what he told you." "Then you know he's right," she replied. A pause. Long and full. "Mark is my half-brother," Harrison said finally. She turned to look at him. "We grew up in the same house. Different mothers. My father's complicated history. Mark has always been everything I couldn't be, easy, warm, unafraid. My father approved of me and overlooked him. I resented him for the freedom he had. He resented me for the recognition I got." He paused. "But we never hated each other. Not really. He just knew, always, exactly how to get under my skin." He turned to face her fully. "He wasn't interested in you, Candice. He was making a point. He wanted me to wake up." "Did it work?" she asked softly. Harrison looked at her. At this woman who had called him stupid on a company-wide chat and reorganized his pens in a rainbow and stayed with him in the dark when he whispered please don't go and told him about her dreams and met him halfway for a kiss at sunrise and then stood in front of his desk without flinching and told him the truth about himself. "Yes," he said. "It did." He took her hand. Gently. Publicly. Right there on the terrace, where any member of the executive team, or his father, could walk out and see. "I've been afraid my whole life," he said. "Afraid of failure. Of weakness. Of my father's disappointment. I've been so busy performing the version of myself he required that I forgot how to just be a person." He squeezed her hand. "You reminded me." Harrison. I want to be the person who loves you in the light, he said. If you'll let me try. The door behind them opened. His father stepped out onto the terrace, took in the scene, his son's assistant, their joined hands, and went very still. Harrison didn't let go. Dad, he said, his voice steady in a way it had never been before. I'd like you to meet Candace Adams. She's remarkable. And she's with me. The silence that followed was the most important silence of his life. And it was the first moment, the very first, that Harrison Remington chose himself. Chose her. In the light. In public. With his father watching. Candace looked at him. At the man who had terrified her, infuriated her, humiliated her, held her hand in the dark, and kissed her at sunrise. And she smiled. Because some people, given enough time and the right amount of courage, become exactly who they were always meant to be. If this story made you feel something, if you stayed until the very end, then you already know that the heart of this channel is stories that are worth staying for. Stories about real feelings. Complicated people. Love that doesn't come easily, but comes honestly. If that's what you're looking for, hit subscribe right now. Because we have more stories coming that will make you laugh, cry, and stay up way too late asking yourself, would I have the courage to do what they did? Drop a comment below. Tell us, Team Candace all the way? Or did Harrison win your heart in the end? And what moment hit you hardest? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you in the next one. Yellow Heart, the life lesson. Real love isn't proven in the dark. It's proven in the light, when it costs something. Harrison and Candace's story is not just a romance. It is a story about what fear costs us when we refuse to confront it. Harrison was brilliant and powerful and deeply, chronically afraid. He had been taught since childhood that vulnerability was a flaw, that love required no sacrifice because love was not something serious men indulged. He loved Candace in the dark because the dark was safe. No witnesses. No consequences. No risk. And Candace, patient, brave, honest Candace, did the hardest thing a person in love can do. She told the truth, even when it hurt. She refused to be someone's secret. She demanded to be chosen fully, or not at all. The lesson is this: the people in our lives will show us exactly what they're willing to risk for us. And we have to be brave enough to take that information seriously. Love that hides is not love, it is comfort. Love that chooses you publicly, imperfectly, at personal cost, that is the real thing. And you deserve the real thing. Don't settle for someone who loves you only when it's convenient. Wait for the person who takes your hand in public. Who introduces you without hesitation. Who looks at you like you are worth every risk. You are.